The terminal was busier than usual that morning. Lines wrapped around the check-in counters, the buzz of conversation mixed with rolling suitcases and the faint scent of coffee. It was the kind of organized chaos that only airports seem to manage. Strangers moving in a single, shared rhythm of hurry. Alicia Grant, 42, stood patiently in line at gate C-27, her carry-on tucked neatly beside her. She was calm, composed, and used to waiting. Airports were second nature to her. She had spent nearly 2 decades working behind the scenes of aviation, inspecting, approving and sometimes grounding the very planes passengers boarded. To everyone else, she looked like an ordinary traveler, jeans, blazer, small laptop bag. But beneath the quiet exterior was a woman who had earned one of the highest positions in her field, Chief Safety Inspector for the Federal Aviation Administration. She never mentioned it. Not because she was modest, but because she didn't have to. That morning, her flight to Denver was for business, an unannounced inspection at one of the country's busiest regional airports. She preferred to travel anonymously when she could. It gave her an honest view of how staff behaved when no one was watching. As the boarding announcement played, Alicia glanced at her watch. "Group 2, the voice said. That was her. She joined the short line leading to the gate counter. Ahead of her, a young couple struggled with oversized bags, apologizing as they tried to rearrange their luggage. The gate agent, a woman in her late 20s named Kara, sighed audibly, her tone sharp. "Ma'am, sir, you'll need to check one of those." "You're holding up the line." Alicia noticed the couple's discomfort. She'd seen it countless times, the imbalance between policy and empathy. Still, she stayed quiet, watching. When it was finally her turn, she smiled politely and handed over her boarding pass and passport. "Good morning." Kara barely looked up. "Good morning," she replied mechanically, scanning the document. Then her eyes paused. "Is this your passport?" "Yes," Alicia said calmly. Kara tilted her head. "It doesn't look like you." Alicia blinked, surprised. "I assure you it's me." Kara frowned, glancing between the photo and Alicia's face. "Your hair's different." "I straightened it last week," Alicia said evenly. "It's still me." Kara's voice sharpened. "And this passport. It's a federal-issued ID." "Yes." "I'm not sure it's valid," Kara said, lowering her voice slightly. "Can I see another form of identification?" Alicia opened her wallet and handed over her driver's license. Kara studied it, tapping her nails against the counter. Then she looked over Alicia's shoulder, where other passengers were beginning to notice the delay. "Ma'am," Kara said, her tone clipped. "I'll need to verify this." "Please step aside." Alicia's brows furrowed. "Verify what exactly?" "Your identification," Kara said. "We've had issues with fake documents lately." Alicia took a slow breath. "Are you saying my federal passport and license are fake?" "I'm saying I need to confirm," Kara replied curtly. Alicia glanced toward the people behind her. Some looked curious, others looked away awkwardly. The couple from earlier exchanged uncomfortable glances. Alicia's voice stayed calm. "You can confirm whatever you like, but I'd prefer if you did it quickly. My flight board's in 10 minutes. Kara crossed her arms. "I'll call a supervisor." "Please do," Alicia said quietly. A few minutes later, a man in a navy blue vest with a badge reading Gate Supervisor R. Kent approached. "What's going on?" he asked. Kara gestured toward Alicia. "This passenger's documents don't match her appearance. I'm holding her for verification." The supervisor turned to Alicia. "May I see your passport, ma'am?" She handed it over again, her movements steady. He examined it for a moment, flipping through the pages. "This looks genuine to me," he said, frowning slightly. Kara shook her head. "The photo's different. I just don't think it's her." Kent exhaled slowly. "Kara, we can't detain people on a hunch." "I'm not detaining," she said defensively. "I'm following procedure." By now other passengers were whispering. A few recorded discreetly on their phones. Alicia noticed but ignored them. Her focus remained on composure. Years in the field had taught her that calm carried more authority than volume ever could. "Ms. Grant," the supervisor said, "do you have any other form of verification?" Alicia hesitated, then gave a small, almost tired smile. "Yes, but I think once you see it, you'll understand why this conversation shouldn't have happened." She reached into her laptop bag, pulled out a slim leather case, and opened it. Inside was a gold and blue badge, neatly polished and unmistakable. The supervisor froze. Kara leaned in slightly, and her expression shifted from irritation to sudden realization. Alicia spoke evenly. Chief Safety Inspector, Federal Aviation Administration. I oversee compliance for all domestic air operations in this region, including this airport. The silence that followed was heavy enough to cut through the hum of the terminal. Kent blinked. Ma'am, I didn't realize you weren't supposed to, Alicia said calmly. But I did expect professionalism. Kara swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. I was just doing my job. Your job, Alicia said gently but firmly, is to ensure passenger safety and dignity. Not to assume who belongs where. Her tone wasn't harsh. It didn't need to be. The authority came from her calmness, not her title. Alicia closed the badge case and tucked it back into her bag. Now may I board my flight? Yes, ma'am, Kent said quickly, motioning toward the gate. Alicia walked forward, collecting her boarding pass. As she passed Kara, she paused just long enough to meet her eyes. Next time, she said softly, verify the document, not the person holding it. Kara nodded, speechless, as Alicia walked down the jet bridge. She could feel the weight of every pair of eyes behind her. Some embarrassed, some impressed, most silent. She didn't need their approval. What mattered was that they'd seen how authority handled ignorance, with control, not revenge. When she reached her seat, she placed her bag neatly in the overhead bin and sat down, exhaling quietly. Another passenger nearby, an older woman, leaned over. I saw what happened, the woman said softly. You handled that with grace. Alicia smiled faintly. Grace is part of the job. The plane door closed. The engines rumbled to life, and as the aircraft began to taxi, Alicia looked out the window. The runway stretching endlessly ahead, the same one she had walked hundreds of times, inspecting every inch for safety, for integrity. It wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated, but it might be the first time it turned into something that would change how an entire airport treated people who looked like her. By the time Flight 272 landed in Denver, the morning's confrontation already felt distant to Alicia. She had spent the 2-hour flight reviewing reports on her tablet, sipping coffee, and jotting down notes for her upcoming inspection. She believed in focusing on what was next, not what had already passed. Still, as she walked through the terminal toward baggage claim, she couldn't shake the feeling that the incident at gate C-27 wasn't over. Not in the way gossip or social media might keep it alive, but in the way moments of injustice tend to linger. Unfinished stories, waiting for resolution. Her phone buzzed. A message from her deputy director. Call me when you land. Heard something happened at National this morning. Alicia sighed softly. The efficiency of word travel inside federal circles was faster than any flight she'd ever taken. She stepped aside near a quiet corner of the terminal and called. Morning, Tom, she said. Morning, he replied. You all right? Got an email from security operations. Apparently there was an issue at the gate before your flight. There was, she said. A minor one. A gate agent questioned my credentials. It's handled, Tom exhaled. Still, it's on the record now. Someone filmed it. It's circulating. Alicia closed her eyes briefly. Of course it is. Tom hesitated. Do you want to file a formal report? No, she said firmly. Not unless it becomes necessary. I don't want a viral moment to overshadow the real work we do. You always take the high road, Tom said. You sure that's enough this time? It has to be, she said quietly. If I use my title to punish, I lose the point of what I stand for. There was silence on the line for a moment. Then Tom said softly, So you're a better person than most of us. I'm just consistent, Alicia said with a faint smile. Talk soon. She hung up and continued walking, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Every step reminded her that power wasn't about making someone small. It was about standing tall without needing to announce it. 3 days later, Alicia was back in Washington. She sat in her office at FAA headquarters, surrounded by paperwork, case files, and flight safety data. Outside her window, the skyline shimmered under late morning sunlight. Her assistant, Morgan, entered holding a printed email. You might want to see this, she said. Alicia looked up. What now? Morgan handed her the paper. A formal apology request. From the airline. Alicia scanned the letter. It was brief, corporate language, careful phrasing. We regret any inconvenience caused by our employees' actions. It ended with an invitation to discuss diversity and professional conduct training for gate staff. Alicia set the paper down. I didn't ask for this. Morgan nodded. I know, but someone else must have pushed it. There's chatter about you being treated unfairly. Alicia sighed. I don't want pity. I want progress. Morgan smiled faintly. That's why they respect you. Alicia leaned back in her chair, thoughtful. Maybe this is a chance to fix more than an apology letter. A week later, Alicia stood in a glass-walled conference room at the same airline's headquarters. The company had requested a private meeting to discuss improving protocol. Around the table sat 3 executives, 2 HR directors, and a nervous-looking young woman from the gate division, Kara, the same gate agent from that morning. When their eyes met, Kara's face paled slightly. Ms. Grant, she said quietly, I didn't think you'd actually come. Alicia smiled gently. I don't believe in handling problems through press releases. I prefer people. The HR director cleared her throat. We want to start by apologizing on behalf of the airline. The situation at National was unacceptable. Our staff have been reminded of identification procedures, and we... Alicia held up a hand. Please don't read me a statement. Let's talk about what really matters. The room fell quiet. Alicia turned to Kara. You made an assumption about me. I'm not angry, but I want to understand what led you to it. Kara hesitated.
Honestly?
Honestly, Kara took a breath. You looked different from your passport photo. And when I saw the credentials, I thought maybe they were too official. I know that sounds ridiculous now, but in that moment, I just didn't want to make a mistake. Alicia nodded slowly. So you made one trying not to make one. Kara's eyes lowered. Yes, that's human, Alicia said softly. But part of professionalism is learning where instinct ends and respect begins. You're allowed to double-check, but not to doubt someone's belonging. Kara's voice cracked slightly. I'm truly sorry. I know you are, Alicia said. That's why I came. Not for an apology, but to make sure the next person doesn't need to show a badge to be believed. She turned to the executives. Your procedures aren't the problem. Your people are following them without understanding them. You're teaching compliance, not compassion. There's a difference. No one spoke for a long time. Then the senior executive, a grey-haired man who'd been silent until now, finally said, What would you suggest? Alicia reached into her bag and pulled out a small folder. I've been working on a training proposal for a while. Cultural awareness in passenger service, real case studies, human-centered communication. It's optional in most places. I think it should be standard. She placed the folder on the table. This isn't about punishment. It's about awareness. You can turn what happened into progress. Kara glanced at the folder, then at Alicia. You're really giving us this? It's not mine to keep, Alicia said. It belongs to anyone willing to learn. The HR director nodded slowly. We'll implement it immediately. Alicia smiled faintly. Good. And when you do, remember this. Professionalism isn't tested when things go right. It's tested when they don't. That night, as Alicia left the building, Kara caught up to her in the lobby. Ms. Grant? She said quietly. Alicia turned. I wanted to say, thank you. You could have had me fired. You didn't. Alicia looked at her kindly. Firing you wouldn't fix anything. Growth does, Kara hesitated. You changed the way I see people. And myself, Alicia smiled. Then we both did something right. She extended her hand. Kara shook it, her grip firm but trembling slightly. As Alicia stepped outside, the evening air was cool, the city lights reflecting off the terminal glass across the road. Planes rose into the darkening sky, tiny symbols of precision and trust. She paused for a moment, watching one disappear into the clouds. For the first time that week, she allowed herself to exhale fully. The world had a long way to go. But for now, one gate, one team, and one conversation had moved a little closer to where it needed to be, and that, she thought, was a flight worth taking. 3 months later, spring sunlight filled the atrium of National Airport with warm light. The usual buzz of travelers, the roll of luggage, and the faint voice of overhead announcements blended into a kind of rhythm, familiar and steady. Alicia Grant stood near a large terminal window, coffee in hand, watching a plane taxi down the runway. She had been here dozens of times before, But this visit wasn't part of her regular inspection schedule. It was something different, a quiet check-in of another kind. After her meeting at airline headquarters, her training proposal had been approved and implemented as a mandatory course for all frontline staff. It had been renamed the Human Factor, and over 3,000 employees had already completed it. She hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. She hadn't even expected to be invited back. But when she received a simple message from the airline's director, "We'd like you to see what you started," she'd said yes. Now she stood in the same terminal where months earlier she'd been stopped, doubted and forced to show her authority just to be believed. This time, she didn't wear her badge. She didn't need to. At gate C-27, the same one where it had all happened, a new gate agent was assisting a family of 4. The mother was flustered, juggling passports and snack bags, while 2 small children fidgeted beside her. The agent smiled patiently. "Take your time," she said gently. "We'll get you boarded together." Alicia noticed the tone and calm, kind, unhurried. It was subtle, but it was everything. She took a seat a few rows away, sipping her coffee, simply observing. A few minutes later, she heard a voice behind her. "Ms. Grant?" She turned. Kara stood there wearing the same Navy uniform, but with a new badge pinned to her lapel. Customer Service Lead. Alicia smiled warmly. "Well, look who's leading now." Kara laughed nervously. "Still learning. But yes, they promoted me last month." "Congratulations," Alicia said. "You must be doing something right." Kara nodded, her eyes bright. "Actually, we've been running your training program non-stop. It's changed how people talk to passengers and to each other." Alicia raised an eyebrow. "Has it now?" "Completely," Kara said. "It's not just about procedures anymore. People are starting to realize every interaction is a chance to represent something bigger than themselves." Alicia smiled. "That's exactly what I hoped." Kara hesitated before adding, "I wanted to thank you again for not giving up on me, or the rest of us." Alicia chuckled softly. "If I'd given up on people who made mistakes, I'd have had to give up on myself a long time ago." They both laughed. The kind of laughter that comes from recognition, not humor. 2 people remembering where they'd started and quietly marveling at how far they'd come. As they spoke, a small commotion arose near the boarding line. A young man in a hoodie and headphones was being stopped by another staff member. The agent's voice carried across the gate. "Sir, I need you to take off your hood before I can check your ID." The young man pulled his hood down, irritated. "It's just a hoodie." "Why's that a problem?" Alicia watched closely. The tension was small but familiar. That same split second when misunderstanding could tip into something worse. Before she could stand, Kara walked over to the counter, calm and composed. She leaned toward her co-worker and said something quietly. The agent nodded, apologizing to the passenger. "My mistake, sir. Thank you for your patience." The young man sighed, but his tone softened. "It's fine." He handed over his boarding pass. Kara turned slightly and met Alicia's eyes from across the terminal. Alicia gave a small nod, proud but understated. When Kara returned, she said quietly, "It's funny. I used to think authority was about control. Now I realize it's about balance." Alicia smiled. "Welcome to the job." Later that afternoon, Alicia met with the airline's senior leadership team in a small conference room overlooking the tarmac. The director greeted her with a handshake. "Ms. Grant, you've made a bigger impact than you realize. The new training reduced passenger complaints by 30%. But more than that, our employees are talking to each other differently." Alicia nodded. "That's the real measure of change," he smiled. "We were wondering if you'd consider expanding the program across other airports. Maybe even work directly with FAA training initiatives." Alicia raised an eyebrow. "You mean take what happened here and make it national?" He nodded. "Exactly." She leaned back, thoughtful. "It started with a mistake. Maybe it should end with a model." He grinned. "That's the spirit." When the meeting ended, Alicia walked back toward the main terminal. The afternoon sunlight slanted through the glass, and for a moment she stopped to take it all in. The people, the motion, the small acts of order and kindness happening all around her. An elderly man struggled to lift his suitcase. 2 younger travelers immediately helped him. A flight attendant knelt to comfort a crying child. A janitor smiled as a stranger thanked him. Small things, but they mattered. Alicia took a deep breath and felt something she rarely allowed herself: pride. Not the kind that came from titles or recognition, but the quiet pride of knowing that even small ripples can turn into waves. As she made her way toward her gate, Kara called after her one last time. "Miss Grant!" Alicia turned. Kara smiled. "If you ever fly through here again, I owe you coffee." Alicia chuckled. "I'll hold you to that." Then she turned and walked towards security, her carry-on rolling smoothly beside her. As she passed through the checkpoint, one of the TSA officers glanced at her ID and smiled. "Have a safe flight, Miss Grant." "Thank you," she said, returning the smile. And for the first time in a long time, she boarded a plane not as an inspector, not as a public official, but as a person, seen, respected, and at peace. A year passed. Airports across the country had adopted Alicia Grant's program. It started with one airline, then another, and soon the FAA requested she collaborate directly on a national initiative. The name stayed the same, the human factor, but its reach grew far beyond anyone's expectations. Now, from the smallest regional terminals to the busiest international hubs, new hires sat through workshops built around one simple principle: procedure means nothing without humanity. Alicia never became a celebrity. That was never her goal. She still refused interviews, still signed her emails simply May Grant, and still preferred to travel quietly. What changed was how people treated each other wherever she went. On a grey Tuesday morning, she arrived at Chicago O'Hare for another inspection. The concourse buzzed with travelers, families, business people, young soldiers heading home. At one gate, she saw something that made her pause. A young agent was helping an older passenger who spoke limited English. The agent bent slightly, speaking slowly, pointing to the boarding pass and smiling the whole time. When the passenger finally understood, they both laughed. Alicia smiled to herself. "That's it," she thought. "That's the change." She continued walking. Everywhere she looked, small details caught her eye. Signs reminding staff to listen first, supervisors greeting passengers by name, attendants guiding nervous travelers instead of rushing them. The ripple had become a culture. Later that afternoon, she was invited to a recognition ceremony at FAA headquarters. She arrived quietly, taking a back seat in the small auditorium. The deputy administrator gave a short speech about bridging professionalism and empathy, then called her to the stage. Alicia hesitated, but the room was already applauding. When she reached the podium, she didn't speak for several seconds. She looked out at the faces, some familiar, some new, and saw herself reflected in all of them. A woman who had once been doubted, now surrounded by people who finally understood what respect could look like. "I didn't start a program," she said softly. "I responded to a moment where someone forgot that their job isn't just to enforce policy, it's to see people. Every one of us has that power, to make a hard day easier, to turn a mistake into a lesson, to listen before judging." She paused. "If that's the only thing this movement accomplishes, it's enough." The room stood in quiet applause. Not loud, not ceremonial, just heartfelt. That evening, Alicia sat by the window of her apartment overlooking the city skyline. Planes crossed the night sky every few minutes, tiny lights moving through the dark. She thought of how many people those flights carried, how many stories they represented, how many chances for grace existed in every boarding line, every interaction. Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Kara. "Training finished at the last regional airport today. Every staff member certified." "We made it, Ms. Grant." Alicia smiled and typed back, "You made it. Keep it human." She set her phone down and took a slow sip of tea, the city lights reflected in the glass. For the first time in years, she felt her work had come full circle. The system she had once inspected for cracks had learned to inspect itself, not for mistakes, but for understanding. Outside, a plane banked gently eastward, its lights steady against the sky. Somewhere on that flight, someone would be greeted kindly, believed without question, and treated with quiet respect, all because of one morning at gate C-27. Alicia leaned back, content. She didn't need recognition or headlines or even thanks. She only needed this, the peace of knowing she had turned one moment of doubt into 1,000 moments of grace. And in the vast hum of an airport night, that was enough.